I went to Oakland for the first time today. Ooh, I had to open my pants and let my gut out.
It's the cheese curds, right? Cheese.
I'm telling you. Oh, I hadn't had cheese curds in years. Hello and welcome to the highs and the low lows with Alex and Aaron. We're here to get high and low on life and life issues like money, love, creativity, friendship, and good ear. Because you know it's always about your good ear. Join us for some sealing time and hopefully some healing time while enjoying elevating herbal refreshments and some good lowdown humor and a little bit of everything in between. So, Aaron, what's our topic for today?
Our topic for today is podcast beefing
Mm.
because it feels like lately, and maybe, I don't know, you could tell me if I'm wrong, but it feels like lately podcasts, the industry, the business of podcasting has turned into almost like its own little reality universe in and of itself, where art is starting to imitate life and vice versa.
I completely agree. And I feel like because these are reality show podcasts and they're constantly exposed to these type of desperate antics, I think they then begin to normalize these desperate antics and then partake in desperate antics.
I agree. Do you think that so many reality stars starting their own podcasts during the pandemic, do you think that that had more of an influence on these things happening? Or do you feel like it's a lot of these podcasters that are doing pop culture commentary, there's a little bit of wannabeism that's just flared up on its own accord?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I think I would definitely say it added fuel to the fire because now you have people that are taking their beef from the show to the podcast, you know, and like I would say, I feel like Candy has a very fair podcast. And she said, hey, if you think I'm going to be biased, I will lend you my platform and you can get interviewed by somebody else, but you can still do it on Speak On It, AKA I can still get paid because it's all about a click and a view, get a dollar or two. But I would also say, like, I feel like her platform is fair and she's had people on that she's agreed with, that she's disagreed with. And I feel like for what it's a great slice of opinion. I feel it's a great slice of opinion. Then you have people like me and I would say a Heather McDonald that enjoy being on the periphery. Like we are comedians in our own right. Like, you know, I was a comedian before I did this. So I don't want to be on a reality show, or I don't want to be on a reality show like the Housewives, the lowest common denominator reality show. I enjoy the periphery, but I also know that conflict gets me clicks and views. So when there is foolishness and fray and there's a skirmish, I also know there's a shekel.
Exactly. What I feel like, because Jeff Lewis, for example, is a prime example of somebody that took the model of his show Flipping Out and basically brought all of the drama onto the radio show. Then you're looking at the content creator community, the commentary community that doesn't have any shows, but yet all of a sudden they're beefing in the mix just like the other ones. You know what I mean?
I feel like with Jeff Lewis, he is an insider. Like me and Heather McDonald, we are on the periphery. We are outsiders. Like she's more periphery than I am because she knows them people. I am an outsider, but as an outsider looking in, I get to just talk about the shows, laugh, and move on because like Jeff Lewis is, you know, behind the scenes, you know, really spilling a little bit of tea, telling tales out of school, you know the producers, you might have been there when it happened. He uses his insideriness. And people do like him. I don't know why, but people do like him. But I feel that they tune into the show because he's got that inner scoop.
This is true. So that kind of leads me to the next element of this, where do you feel like, I feel like we don't know, even as an audience, where the public versus private line is, right? Because if we think about, I think Heather McDonald has been doing this for a very long time. And if you look at the evolution of content creation, particularly podcasting, right? A lot of people were having their friends on, their peers, like people that they knew, and it was a for free transaction because you were both, the collab was getting you exposure, was potentially gaining something. And then you see the podcasting industry just blow up. And a new layer of working professional comes into play, right? So then it's like you have these friendships that you've built, these alliances, these working friendships, all of that stuff, but like there's no contracts really. And then there's like a new layer of professionals that are paying, but maybe you're not paying your friend. And, like, how do we think that the line of public versus private, where do we say that there's not a dollar sign? Do you know what I mean? Because like you said, Candy's feeling like Mrs. Roper right now, a click and a view, getting a shekel and a chuckle.
I I think everybody has to figure out how they want to run their business. And I think when you're going on these shows, you have to have a specific goal. If you're going to go
Mm,
on and be like, look, I'm going to need a check, then make sure you get your check. If you're going on to promote your product, say, look, I'm going to need this much airtime. I'm happy to go on. You're going to get clicks and views, and I'm helping you create content. Also, you can help me. If you're going to give me exposure, then let's have something specific to expose, a specific product to talk about, rather than just, oh, okay, here I'm me. Like, I'm going to say, it's like, yeah, I'm coming on your show, and I've got, a show coming up at the Mirage in Las Vegas or whatnot. Like, or hey, check out my YouTube channel. I also have a podcast with Chris that drops, every weekend at some point. We get to it when we get to it. Um, so I would say, if you're going to go for exposure, and also make sure that you mention your show or your product at the beginning and at the end. Because at the end, when they rushing you off and you drop your socials, it's like, okay, that's cute. Make sure it's at the beginning though, so people will actually listen, and then have the follow up at the end. So if you're going to get exposure, make sure that they actually promote you, and don't just give you that one quick drop at the end. Get a drop in at the beginning too. If you don't have something to necessarily promote, where you can translate it into dollars, you can translate that into an ad, you may want to stay home. You may want to keep your mouth shut, because the thing is, once you've told your story, it's told. If you need to get money out of that story, then make sure you're getting money out of that story. And if people
right.
aren't willing to pay, then maybe you should keep it and save that story for a rainy day. People will still be interested. Well, but don't let it go stale.
Do you think that people should negotiate maybe things like, hey, have my Cash App handle up on, like the little ticker tape, or like, the different, because I feel like there's,
100%. A hundred
right?
percent. Especially depending on what level you're on, because you are the only one that knows what you want, and you're going to be the only one that's unhappy if you don't get it. Hope
Ooh.
is for suckers.
Well, one of the big issues with Jeff Lewis and Heather McDonald, speaking of beefs and feuds and all of this, was that um, there was a fellow comedian named Justin Martindale who had been doing Heather's show quite regularly, and I frankly loved whenever she had him on because I liked him a lot better than her. No offense to Heather McDonald, but he um did not get paid by her. She told Jeff Lewis not to have Justin on because she didn't want their shows to be too similar. In my mind, if you are not paying me, you are not to be blocking any blessings. No matter what you may or may not want to happen, you are not paying someone. You should. To me, that was, I thought, an entertainment faux pas. What did you think about that? What do you think about that?
I feel like this is where Heather is a shithead.
Right?
There's no
Yes.
other, because you know what it is to come up in the comedy world. Why do you turn into
Yes. A
the mucky
Karen.
mucks that make our lives living hell? Like,
Yes.
you've got a good contract. Juicy Scoop is a hit. You're making good money off this show. There is no reason why you couldn't even give him a day. Me said that you could pay, you could give a day rate. I didn't come and me one go home. You could have given Justin Mel 150 for a few hours of work. You could have given him like 150, $200, like, an episode, maybe even more, maybe even a great. You could have thrown him like 33 episodes. That's a co-host. That is
Really.
a co-host. And here's the tough thing. This is when the younger up and coming comedians have to be able to say, you know what? Okay, I've done 5 freebies,
Right.
or maybe I'll even do 10, but now it's like, okay, hey, I've done 10 episodes. Would you like me to, maybe let's do this quarterly? Maybe monthly, where I just, I know I'm going to come on every month and I'll promote my shows. And, if there's like, and Heather McDonald, like, her kids go to a private school with Sharon Stone's kids. So she got money. I don't know. Is that husband rich?
I think he manages her career. So I think he retired early based on his investments and whatnot. I think they're like, they live in the valley. I think they're like upper middle class, like, but definitely like working level entertainers. Do you know what I mean? Like, they got a home in La Quinta built, so she's doing just fine. If you have a vacation home on your income, then you're doing just fine.
Please, you have a home on your income. You're doing just fine.
Well, yeah, yeah. So yes. Well, and that's yes. Well, and that was part of the beef, was that it took one of their mutual friends, Krista Lamas, to suggest to Heather that she start paying her regulars, because like, you've been doing really well, you're getting a vacation home, like, you're doing well by having these people on regularly. Don't you think it's time to start paying them? Um and so, for me, if you're not paying me, like, that was the part that I thought was ridiculous. The fact that you're not even paying Justin this entire time, and you were specifically telling Jeff not to have him on your show. That's wrong. You can't block anybody's opportunities if you're not paying them. That, to me, was kind of the sticking point. Um, and then, so that leads me to kind of my next question, is professional collabs, right? When you're doing that, like, maybe you're like friendly with the content creator. Do you owe that person the same integrity as you do a friend? Or how do you keep the balance of friendship and business at the same time? Because sometimes maybe a collab or a content creator, you're friendly with them, but if they F you over, then it's way more worth the coin to go and blow them up on your Patreon, or like be the gossip and put them on blast, because it's like, if you're a drama channel or something, then that's just what you do.
When I do collaborations, I know, one, it's people that, like, I genuinely want to create something with. So I know we're just going to have, like, when we have Bondi Blue on the show, or Maddie Rance on the show, or Dustin Ross, I know I'm going to hear new jokes, new material. I know I admire them and their art and their comedy. So I'm inviting them on because I know it's going to make the show funnier. So it's about quality. I also know, okay, we can share our socials, and hopefully you'll pick up a few followers and I'll pick up a few followers. Um, but I don't have, the only regular is Chris, and Chris gets paid.
And that business would never go on the streets.
Ever. We keep our business out the street, out the street. I mean, even Chris does Chris's business on Patreon. He ain't telling, he gonna make sure you get his coin if you know his business. Um, some people don't have a line. I think some people think they have a line, but they don't see how fast things can get out of control and how you can end up feeling used, but then being afraid to speak up. I think it's also about setting clear boundaries from jump, knowing what you want and how you're going to go about getting it, how you're going to feel if it doesn't work out. Is the juice worth the squeeze? You know, how can this work for me if this doesn't pan out? What's my plan B? Is it something that, is really going to inconvenience me? Is it like, okay, I'm just going to do this little collab for an hour? Or is this, something longer where you're going to have to really be around this person? And I want to say this about Justin Martindale.
Yes.
Did maybe Heather think because she had him open for her, was she paying him for that, or was he getting money from the clubs for that, where she's like, oh, I'm giving you a platform to be exposed on, but then I'm getting you comedy gigs where you're getting,
Yes. Oh, I think
checks
so too.
lodging. So maybe she thought I was doing enough, and he, it's like, okay, I'm doing this show weekly, I need to be paid. Maybe it could be that type of miscommunication.
I think it really was an evolution over a long period of time, because she's had him open for her a lot. And she's also had him on live shows, when like a live podcast. And I think that I don't know if she pays for the live podcast. I just assumed she paid him to open for her. So I think there was a period of time where things got a little murky, you know what I mean? Where like
And
assumptions just started to be made, like you were saying, and then that came to bite them in the butt later.
I think so. And that's why you've got to be clear from jump. And two, I could see her hiding money. I like with me and Chris runs his own numbers. Like he knows every check that comes in, everything that we make, he knows everything. They probably don't. And then he started to see the car upgrade, the vacation home,
Mm-hmm.
the
Yes.
jewelry upgrade. Like you can see when somebody got some extra money. You can see it's like, oh, okay, car is new. Got your neck, just got your nails done. Oh, fresh blowout. And in LA, everybody knows what everything cost. So all of a sudden you used to be getting lunch at Chick-fil-A and now you're going to Spago.
I think it was the house in La Quinta, which is like, where Kyle
Her
has a house.
podcast, that's a white woman. Her
It,
podcast is a multi-million dollar deal. Like that I'm sure that Juicy Scoop is a thing. I am sure she has a multi-million dollar deal. If that Barstool, them girls from Barstool is worth 60 million, I'm sure she's worth 3 to 5. And I could see her even 10 to 15. We don't know. But
I
they throw money at women like that. So I could see her deal being a smooth 10 million. And also Los Angeles is small and people are messy. A little
that's
birdie could have told him the deal that she had or the renewal. And then also, people leave papers around. Sometimes the computer screen is open. People will be nosy.
it
People
was
will
Jeff.
find out.
It was Jeff who told Justin, Heather told me not to have you on the show. That's what started the whole thing. It was Jeff Loose
Because
Lips
he wanted,
Lewis.
because Jeff was like, well, he should be able to do like a one-off episode.
I think he was well, I don't know. I wonder if he was feeling a little bitchy because Heather had gotten into a thing with Megan, who's one of his co-hosts on his show. And this is kind of where you and I started talking about doing a podcast on podcast beefing altogether, because honestly, in LA, it is legitimately it's the waters are mixing and merging. Reality stars are all getting their own podcast, and they're leaning on co-hosts that they're farming from the podcast world, because those are the folks that know how to help carry the show. Julie and Brandy, who were doing Jeff Lewis's after show, were regulars on Heather McDonald's show, and then he grabbed them and then crucified them to his audience when the show wasn't going well and fired them like he does everybody on his show. He Jenny Pulos them.
And that's another thing. Like that's
Mm,
his mo.
yes,
He
it is.
is, very conflict based,
Yes,
and he will burn you. Like he goes through people. He'll just burn you. Like I would never work with the Jeff Lewis
public,
ever. I
public.
would never, because I know that something is going to happen and
Yes,
you're going to
yes.
go off on me like that. I'll walk away from you and you gonna talk shit about me. So I'm just like, nah, I don't want to give you a story.
Yeah. Well, and the problem is Jeff does it publicly. You're lucky if you even get to be there to have a word in edgewise because he keeps doing it. He did it with Heather. He did it with Julie and Brandy. He keeps doing this where he'll talk about it publicly on his show that has this huge, serious XM listener base, right? And they don't get to say shit because they've already been let go and or whatever, and then Heather went straight to her Patreon to talk about it, and so then it became the podcast wars. I would never want to be a regular on his show because he literally said that Julie and Brandy clearly were self-sabotagers of their own careers. Can you like the lasting impact that you have on their lives for saying that on your show because you're mad at them? And he was like, "Well, I hope this works out like later on in life." Like, he always does that where he'll burn down the house and then he'll go pick up the ashes and want to hand them to you and be like, "I hope
And
we can make up someday."
and that's a very disgustingly white privilege thing to say.
Sure effing is.
It smacks of your wealth, your white privilege. It smacks of it because because I am rich and I have a white face, I will continue to find people that will put up with me.
Yes. Yes.
I know
The
I would never have that option because that behavior would never be tolerated from me for a second.
I just thought it was unforgivable of him to say that they were self-saboteurs of their own careers because you are now permanently affecting their potential to earn other income now that you fired them because you're making them the scapegoat of your own piss poor management. That's just my 2 cents on that one.
And I would say the one thing is because Jeff Lewis is known for being an asshole,
He is.
known for being a shithead. It's like if somebody told me they got fired by Jeff Lewis, I'd hire him because it's like,
I
oh,
know, right?
good, you don't work with him. That must mean you're not a shithead.
Right? Oh, I know.
Like
Well,
that's one of those, like, I'll take that with a salt of grain.
truly. Well, it's funny because he's got MJ, Mercedes Javid from Shaws of Sunset, who is licking boots to be a regular. Let's just be real. MJ is called spade a spade because nobody picked up the spinoff of you, Reza and Gigi. There's Lala that comes running in there because she's trying to,
Wait, I'm
start.
sorry. Wait, Reza, Gigi, and MJ wanted a spinoff?
They
I'm
shot a
sorry.
sizzle reel.
I'd get a glass of ice water for somebody in hell before I give them a view.
Clicking a view.
A
Um,
quick view. I
they had
mean,
a
like MJ is
yeah.
ugly on the inside and the outside, and so is Gigi. Like,
I know.
okay,
Well, so
great,
is Reza.
you had a baby, but you look more like a Chihuahua than Bronx.
Hmm. They did have a spinoff. They had a sizzle reel that they were shopping around Bravo, um, right after they got canceled. Because you know
And
how
Bravo said no. Bravo
they
is
said
done with
no.
them.
Yeah, Bravo said not funny enough, not enough.
And they're not enough. Like they were never like, we watched because we wanted to see Nima come out of the closet. Um the Chubby Chasers watched for Mike. And I mean, honestly, like I didn't watch for Reza and the Hillbilly Ho of WeHo.
No, no,
Hillbilly Ho of WeHo is still an excellent read.
it is. He's trying to do like gardening posts now and stuff, in his property. But I mean, that kind of leads me to one of the next topics about this whole area, because I think that Jeff Lewis is the prime example of someone that doesn't have anyone like to truly check the ego. And I feel like he's got his fan base, they call themselves the chumps. And it's a very, very aggressive fan base, of course. And I just think to myself, how do you check your own ego when you get to this place? Because clearly people, like you said, are tuning in to watch the drama and the fighting. And then, now you have this little network of shows, and you can go and watch Heather McDonald's, you can go and watch Justin Martindale's, you can go and check out Julie and Brandy's Patreon. Like, there's now this is web, right? This web. And then there's even other little webs where Zach Peter and Up and Adam, they have a beef, and that was at Sheena's record release party from Vanderpump Rules. And so now you have these little webs that are like, they're like intertwining from the reality world and the podcast content creation world. Like I said, Lala's a regular on Jeff Lewis's live. So now you're Heather McDonald was mentioned on Kelly Dodd's podcast, because Kelly Dodd is part of the friend group. So it just becomes this whole interwoven world of a click and a view and your friendship and gossip. I wonder, how do you even keep your ego in check in this world, right? Because it's like the being unbridled, being raw, just having whatever self-righteous opinion you have gets you revenue.
For me, I separate myself into two people. I am the slick-mouthed Alexander Diane Rodgers when I am on camera or on stage, and I am Al in real life. I like living in San Francisco. I like that my friends aren't that into reality TV, and like they know what I do, but like I'm not necessarily the funny friend. Like when I'm off work, I am off work. I am a normal person. And I feel like the people that separate themselves where it's like, okay, I am this on screen. I play this amped up version of myself. It's fun. It's cute. I enjoy my artistic life, but I can't be like that all the time. Nobody would want to be around me. Like it's cute for 8 minutes. It's cute for an hour on Pop Roast because it's a show. You're watching me and Chris be heightened versions of ourselves, be it our most funny. But like we're not like we don't walk around insulting our friends and insulting people. So it's definitely a balance of who you are on stage versus who you are in real life, and it's cool to be you can be flippant and assy and go off and snap, crackle, and pop when you're on stage because that's what people are paying for. That's why they're there. But in real life, and like these people, they never get to turn it off. They're so entrenched.
No, they are not turning it off, are they? Because I do feel like part of that, to kind of jump off what you were saying, is because they're part of the LA scene. And having grown up, Hollywood adjacent in LA County, in Long Beach, they're all wannabes. It's all Klingons. It's all networking. Like you're literally watching like what the LA scene is like in kind of these podcast beefs, especially because there's a little web. Heather McDonald, Justin Martindale, Jeff Lewis, and all the players that are kind of swirling around all of that, they're absolutely like part of the LA scene.
Yeah, and even like I think Up and Adam.
And I will say that as far as being a content creator goes, having a little bit of an insider opinion or viewpoint can be a good thing, right? I mean, think about how much you gained by going just to BravoCon the year that you both went. You can now speak to the fact that you could say Kenya is a beautiful woman and Giselle is not. Like how they hold up and
Giselle is not.
You can see who looks good on camera and who looks good in person.
And like even living in New York, like I was on the comedy scene, which is very different and much more humble. But also New York is just like everybody's very honest about their financial situation there. And we handle it very differently. It's very like, oh, okay, like you have rich friends and you have poor friends.
I'm noticing, and I noticed this with the Bethany interview with Nene. Bethany keep trying to ask Nene specifics with money and stuff, and she was like, "I'm not telling you specifics. No, I'm not." And I do think that that's definitely a New York like mentality.
You know what somebody makes by what neighborhood or what building they live in. Like, it's, you can't hide your money there like you can hide it in California. In California, it's very closed mouthed, very gatekeeping. Maybe there's an opportunity that you have that I could use, and I may not be friends with you if you're not going to help me with that opportunity. Like, I don't want to be around people that don't want to see me elevate. All of my best friends have helped me in some way, like move forward. Like, one of my friends referred me to a job that, like, let me help me start the channel, and it was my corporate job. And I used to, like, if you go back to the very beginning, I have videos where I was at that job. My best friend let me stay with him so I could buy the my first MacBook so I could start my channel. I don't do the gatekeeping thing, and that's one thing I don't like about California.
Yeah. Well, look, that's part of why there was the giant beef because there was gatekeeping going on. And uh it's true in the LA scene, especially when you're in the entertainment industry, and I can speak to this myself from having experience of having relationships with people in the entertainment industry. Once you hit a certain level, actually, not even at a certain level, everybody coming in is looking for an angle, like at some in some way, and everybody's out to use one another, and it's not necessarily malicious, but absolutely don't forget it. People are friends with people that have influence or access or all of these things, and they use their beauty, their brains, their pussy, they use anything that they can to access it. But like everyone is leapfrogging on one another because you never know when that one alliance that you've made or that one networking opportunity that you've made is going to pop off into a situation that breaks your career into a whole new level.
Absolutely. And I would say in New York, it's everybody is honest about what they bring. Like, you'll have like, this is how I got to go to Fire Island. You'll have a friend who, they have a house or their parents have a house, but they need to fill it. So they're going to bring their interesting friends, where they're going to bring another rich friend because you got to have somebody to bankroll the shit.
Right.
They're going to bring the funny friend, me. They're going to bring one or two cute friends that are just pretty to look at. And then they're going to bring
Right.
a smart or resourceful friend. Everybody has a role to play. And so either
Yes.
you provide the table or you sing for your supper. But on the East Coast, everybody is cool with that. It's not like you're being used. It's, we are collaborating for a group project. And the group project,
Yeah.
we all want to have a good time on this vacation. We all want to get together at this house. It's boring if it's just two people. It's got to be the right mix of people, but everybody's got to be a little different.
I know that there's like no general rule to any of this stuff, right? But like it just makes me think listening to you talk about that really what the high of the low of the dirty low, all the feuding and whatnot, what it really boils down to is I know you can't bum rush talking about I know there's a certain finesse to some things. I get that. When especially when you're trying to network or collaborate with other creators in order to advance your career. But there comes a point where you've got to tell yourself, I need to ask the question, what kind of milestones do we hit before there's some kind of compensation, or what does the ladder look like? If we grow in success, what's your plan to like handle things, you know?
Exactly. That, what are the goals, is a great question.
Right?
Like, what are we moving towards? Do
Yeah.
I've done a couple of free episodes. I would love to be a free guest, but if I'm going to be a free guest, I can only do it quarterly because I've got to
Mhm.
use the time that I would spend preparing for your show and doing your show for other financial opportunities because, I got to eat and I got to pay rent.
Or like, why not? Or like, exactly. Or like, hey, I've been on your show this many times. If we get this many likes on the YouTube channel, like, when do I get a cut of your ad revenue, or, however the back end works? Or, hey, can we put up, like I said earlier, my Cash App and have that be, displayed somewhere? And maybe you say, shout out to my guests, send them a tip if you like them on the show. You know what I mean? Like, start getting, what are the avenues or ways that you can actually reap some kind of monetary benefits? And like, maybe even ask the person, hey, when you have this many views, or like, what kind of milestones does my participation need to reach in order for there to be a progression of what we're doing?
Because clearly, if you keep having me on, I am of
Right?
value to your product.
And maybe I'm naive, like maybe like walking in talking like that'll, get you kicked off a couple of shows. But at the same time, it also seems like every time this stuff blows up, right? It's just based on a lot of assumptions, which what they say about that stuff. Because I think Heather McDonald just assumed that like because she's been doing it so long, that just the exposure to be on her show and then like including him on the tours and things like that was enough.
Yep. And the thing is, exposure, and this is when Heather comes off as a young boomer, which I think
Yeah,
she is.
she
Uh,
is. She is.
Exposure bucks don't pay bills anymore. Exposure was great in the 80s when we didn't have the internet and getting on somebody's platform really meant something.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny Carson was exposure. Also, that was putting you in, a lot more homes. Now it's like, girl, I got exposure all day, every day. I'm on podcasts. I'm in the circle. I'm doing these shows. Like I'm exposed. What I
Mm-hmm.
need is a job. I've already been exposed. They've seen my anus.
Yep. Right?
It's
They've
exposure doesn't matter. Like it's like, okay, great. Everybody's seen me and they like me, and you keep having me back on your show. Exposure is the first episode. That's exposure. That's a one-off. All right, I'll do this for the exposure. The second
mm-hmm.
episode, it's like they met me. Okay, I'll give you two for exposure. After that, it's like, okay, well, unless I have a product to promote or a project to promote, if you need a co-host, here's my fee. If you want me to do a segment, we can talk day rates, we can talk segment fees. I could be a correspondent, we could talk fees for that. But I feel like, on a TV show, if you're a co-host, you're going to have to get something because the guild regulates that. But because podcasts don't have a guild, people are like, oh, I can have these guests on and basically get a free show.
Right. And it's evolved beyond that, right? Because like the pandemic catapulted the trajectory of content creation. And I use the term podcast loosely because we know that, as you well know yourself, there's the YouTube element, there's the video element. You may be on a platform like iHeart or Sirius where you have to deal with some amount of corporate America, but then you also get the benefits of that, right? Or maybe
Mm-hmm.
you're doing what Heather McDonald did, where it's like it's a homegrown thing that your husband is like your business manager and you've been working hard to cultivate your own thing, and that's the longevity of it is really kicked in, and like that's all come to fruition, but you've had to like slog your way through, right? But it's evolved to where it's not just the hobby thing or the way super indie thing to do. It's much more mainstreamed. And if you can get yourself a vacation home in La Quinta, you can start paying your regulars. You certainly don't have the right to say, don't have these people on your show because I don't want our stuff to be too alike. Because when Justin found out, I think that's why he was livid. And that's why I would be too. Because I would be like, bitch, you just started paying me less than 6 months ago, and you're gonna tell Jeff Lewis, who Jeff Lewis pays all his regulars, by the way. He pays them and has from the start. So, like, the rules of like colleague fouls were kind of everywhere. But I think it's very common, right? Like, if you think about how often partnerships, duos, commentary channels, all of that break up over these kinds of things, it's like we got to start talking about the nuts and bolts.
And then also, I think somebody ends up getting greedy. And also, I
Yes.
think that people get used to all the money. See, I
Yes.
started with Chris. It was 60-40 at first. And then we moved to 50-50 when we got a podcast deal. Um, and I never got used to 70-30. It would be hard for me to go from that extra 20 or 30% to 50-50.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that people get used to not paying and making all the money, and they don't have the mindset of, oh, they're a part of this show. This is half theirs, or this is a quarter. They're like whatever, their percentage is.
Right. Like, my 20% is like substantial now. And therefore, if I were really looking at it fairly, that means I should kick over some more to the person that's helping make it significantly more substantial. But like you said, I imagine if you wanted, you'd be like, here, just take, 20% because you should out of your wallet. That personally feels challenging. But like you said, you went into it when you just had the integrity from the jump. You're like, I'm not going to play around. We're just going to do this the right way, off the
Because
cuff.
50% of something better than 100% of nothing.
Well, and you and Chris have a partnership that like has some solid ground. Do you know what I mean? It's like, because it's just been upfront and that way from the jump. And it's just interesting, I guess, how many situations, which we find out on the show, are not so clear cut. And then I always try to turn something on its head when I like think too hard about something. I can understand why, Heather would be a little dusty, right? Because she is a young boomer, faux show. That's part of why my like love of Heather McDonald hits a ceiling, because there is a little bit of a generational disconnect. But I also think too, she was on Chelsea lately. She's worked her butt off in this industry and really is one of the pioneers kind of in the whole Bravo sphere of doing commentary and all of that kind of stuff, right? And I think that there's just some presumptions that up until now she was going on just based on having done it as long as she has. I don't think the woman is necessarily malicious, but if you also had to dog eat dog scrape by, this entertainment industry is not for the weak, right? You can also kind of understand how somebody might get that mentality and not think about rolling down the wealth.
No, I'm sorry. As a woman, she's had too many doors. As a woman, she's had too many doors shut in her face. Maybe if she was a white man, I could buy it, but I'm sorry. No, you know what it is to be shit on and denied. You've seen all the comedy shows where they don't even have one woman on the lineup. You know what it is to be shut out, and you happily participated in shutting someone else out when you had the power to do better.
Yeah, no, I definitely think she's got some I want to be included energy for sure. And I think that motivates because, she's a young boomer running all around with the Vanderpump cast and very, like it's in the mix, in the mix. Let me tell you something. I am 44 years old and I don't need to be
How's she
mixy.
mixy at 56?
I was about to say, I don't need to be mixy. I don't. It all becomes interconnected because, like I said, having these insider relationships can give you an edge on your podcast, but yet at the same time can cause quite a bit of trouble. Because if you get the wrong one going on your podcast publicly, they can heavily affect your career.
I mean, well, if you work with anybody shitty,
That's
I
true.
mean, if you have anybody label you as difficult, I mean, hell, look at poor Mira Sorvino. She just didn't want to be assaulted by Harvey Weinstein, and it ruined her career because she was difficult. And I find that whenever it's difficult, it's usually a woman with standards or a black person that won't tolerate piss poor treatment. Then it's difficult.
Oh, well, listen, they put Martha Stewart in jail for being a bitch, not for insider trading, okay? Because, people from Enron couldn't go to jail, but she did. We've talked about how this weird world of all this interconnectivity gets weaponized, right? And it seems like at the moment, white hot, that oh my God, this career is ruined. Oh my God, this friendship is ruined. Oh my God, this person's reputation is ruined. And then beef starts to turn into jerky. you know? So it's when does what do we think about beef shelf life? Are
You know what? It's got to be interesting because I each beef can turn stale. It all depends on the argument. I
right.
feel like the first 2 weeks it's good eating. Honestly, the shelf life
Yeah.
it may be 7 days. It may be like a Thanksgiving. And I feel like unless there's new shit that comes forth, like a court case, i.e., Tasha K and Cardi B. Now that beef has
Oh,
been going on for years. I feel like that type of beef, it's still cooking. It
I was
is
about to
still
say
cooking.
it's
Like,
still
cause
turning
she
on
hasn't
the
paid
spit.
yet. So that beef will go on. Remember what Cardi B said on Love and Hip Hop? Forever.
Forever.
And that when
And
she said that, that bitch meant business.
listen,
And she
listen.
said,
She,
I'ma show you much better than I could tell you.
and Tasha just did the rounds. She did the Adam 22 interview. She did the Joe Budden interview. Propped
Oh,
up in
Joe
front of the
Budden wouldn't air the interview. He said it was an
interview.
algorithmical problem and a legal problem and a financial problem because I guess she probably said something that he was just like, oh no, I didn't know that she had just lost this lawsuit because like nobody wants to mess with Cardi in court.
Well, she's still talking about it like she's not guilty. There are so many reasons probably why it was not a good idea to release. I watched parts of the Adam 22 interview with Tasha. I'm such a sucker for like a 9-minute clip. Um, she is still very fast and loose with all the things that she discussed about the court case and there's so many reasons why it's a potential liability to have that interview out running around. And that's because that's what Tasha does, right?
And Joe has a very lucrative podcast deal, so he's not gonna mess up his millions. Because the thing is, like, now you're playing with sponsors, and
Yeah.
sponsors don't play.
Yeah. I think it was foolish. I just research your guests before you have them on. Make sure you really understand what's going on, Joe. That's all I gotta say about that. Because I mean, I think most people are aware of what is at risk if you interview her right now because there's nothing settled in that lawsuit. That beef, that's still turning on a spit. That got rehydrated, or I don't think that's dehydrated yet, really. I mean, that beef is still going strong.
And this is why I don't break stories and I don't play in court.
There's an example of beef that stays alive. Um, Jeff Lewis beef,
But I
if
would say beef also can go bad very quickly. And this is why I got out of the beef because you start like when you see a sane person and a crazy person arguing on a hill, you can't tell who's who. And eventually
mm,
the audience turns on you if you can't let it go.
oh
And
yes,
you
mm-hmm.
become childish and immature in their eyes, and they want nothing more to do with you.
Yes, right, exactly. Like another one, um, Ariana from Vanderpump Rules is on Dancing with the Stars right now, and Tom Sandoval is on, what is that, like
Yep.
something Force,
He's
whatever.
special forces, and
Thank
now
you,
he's
thank you.
starting his podcast. And so everybody hated Tom for a minute and hated Raquel for a minute, and they went off on them. Now that everybody's cooled down, we're starting to see people saying, oh, they were too harsh, they were too mean. And now them cussing them out on that reunion is forever. And so as it ages, opinions will change. And they're like, okay, yeah, but you weren't sleeping with him anyway. How did you think it was going to end? And once people cool down, public opinion begins to shift. The goodwill of the audience is something that these people are riding on, and it's very tenuous. It's like a wire. It's like a wire.
I'm also, to be honest with you, I'm tired of hearing about Scandal. Like, I don't really need y'all to be like up in my face right now. You could take a break. You could take a rest.
There is a part of me that kind of feels like Scandival is the real life, the past from Todd Tucker and Candy Barres. Tom and Ariana are still living together. I think they are laughing all the way to the bank.
Well, they're the perfect example of LA intertwinement, because they put their relationship on reality TV and they allowed it to live there even when on the personal side it was struggling, right? America watched this affair play out right before our eyes, so we all had some kind of parasocial vested interest. And like you said, both of them, particularly Ariana, obviously, I think Tom will still have his own uptake. It may be still a bit of an unpopular opinion to have right now, but I
Oh
do
no,
think Tom.
Tom is still a cute man with his six pack. Tom will be fine. Tom is cute. Tom is cute. I can't take that from him. I didn't say it was a good person. I didn't say it was
No,
intelligent. But I'm not going to argue with the package that he comes in. He looks like a
and
fun
he knows how to be. He knows how to kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's something that if you watch all the earlier episodes, it was what kept him out of trouble up until now. He knows how to come off in this way that is kind of like, seems like he's a more endearing, genuine person than he actually quite is. Even though he kind of is. Do you get what I mean? He's got this.
yeah, he's got a charm. He's
Yes,
got a
he
charisma. Like
does.
I could tell, like I would probably enjoy spending an afternoon with him, and I feel like he knows how to pay attention to who he's with and make you feel special and have fun. Like he's a
Yeah,
fun guy, and if you don't
yeah.
expect anything more than that from him, that's what he will give you, and he can do that very well. I also think, like, him and Ariana have both admitted they weren't fucking anymore. How did we think this was going to end? Like, the
Uh,
bad breakup was coming. It was just like, okay, who's going to cheat first? Because they were showmans, but they still never got married, never had a kid. They only bought the house together. This was much more of a, I'd rather have a roommate and build equity than anything else. And also, they're probably staying in that house because they bought that shit at like 3% during the panty. Am I right? Or pre panty. And so now they're like, I'm not moving out for 7% with these prices. And even though Ariana's like, cash flush with all this new money, they may still be a couple.
they did buy the house pre-pandemic. And everyone that, like, Tom and Katie bought a house in the same area and they sold theirs. And both of them have downgraded as far as lifestyle goes. You know
Wait,
what they
I'm
can
sorry,
afford
what?
now. Tom and Katie,
Oh,
because
oh,
when they got divorced, they had a house in the same neighborhood, and they sold their house. And both Tom and Katie are now in apartments. And like, not
yeah,
because you
yeah,
can't afford
because
shit out there.
that double income life is very seductive.
Mm-hmm.
That double income life is seductive. There's a bit of me that's like, I would rather keep my own place in a relationship just so that I'm never seduced by the double income life. Because I think about either paying what I'm paying now, but having something, twice as nice, or paying half what I'm paying now and just having half that money. Oh, yeah.
It just goes back to our original topic where, the entertainment industry has a very weird, slidey world. Life and art are intermingled. You know what I mean? You just don't necessarily know where you're going to end up. I don't know where they were headed, but having an affair on TV, well, I mean, we'll see what kind of idea that was. We'll see what kind of idea that was when this all pans out, because that goes back to the beef shelf life.
This is beef that has evolved.
Yeah,
This is now you see we have never ending beef like Tasha K, and then
right?
we have evolution beef where we watch
Evolution
a
beef.
really it is. We watched a relationship implode, and now
Yes.
everybody's kind of rising from the ashes like phoenixes from the fire. Ariana was never going to be a name people spoke, unless it was followed by Grande. But now,
Yes.
you bumped up a little bit, and Vanderpump's going to be on for another couple seasons. Like you're
Yeah.
secure.
Yeah. You're on Dancing with the Stars. Scandival. You went to the White House. They had uh Andy Cohen doing a Scandival joke on what just recently? There was some I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible. And if you think about how many different podcasts they all made money off of, because Lala has a podcast, Sheena has a podcast, I think Katie
And
has a podcast.
and those podcasts, I'm sure, are like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like just because they're connected to Bravo, like they like that, like they're in. Like they're probably
Mm-hmm.
getting their same season salary from that.
I feel like they are all learning how to infiltrate those deals and at different paces. You know what I mean? Because some reality stars have had their own independent presence for a while, and I think they're able to capitalize better on it. Like, no surprise, but Sheena actually had a pretty strong page or like YouTube presence and like all that kind of stuff. Lala said that she freaking put the down payment on the house she bought in Palm Springs with the send it to Daryl money that she got off the sweatshirt. I might be willing to beef with you to put a down payment on a house. That's what I'm saying here. Do you know what I mean?
A lot of this shit is staged. Where it's like, look, let's
Yeah.
get to the money. I mean, my drama videos did the best out of anything. When I was in the drama and snap, crackling, and popping, oh, those would get 250,000 views.
See, that's wild, Alex.
The algorithm favors that. The algorithm
Yes.
wants that, and that's what
Yes.
people will click on faster. You can do amazing independent work. Won't nobody look at it. But you cut somebody out. Oh, everybody wants to hear.
See, this is what I'm talking about. See, this is the reality of the beef. This is why some people are like, I don't care. I will use this. It is all for fodder. And a part of me can understand it. You know what I mean? Because it's like if we're collaborators, if we're peers, if we're colleagues, and you act a certain way or you act stupid, yeah, I'm gonna go hop on my YouTube and talk about it. And if I make, if down payment on a house money, then yeah, I might yell send it to Daryl on an IG live. But they also live their lives that way, and I just couldn't handle the stress.
It may not be stressful if it's planned.
Right. That is true. That is true. And then it's fun. Then you're like, oh, let's be for fun.
It's like
Fun
that. If it's
for
like, okay,
funsies.
look, we're gonna get out here, and I'm just gonna make a joke about it, and we gonna call each other everything but a child of God. But at the end of the day, you got your 200,000, I got mine. Bump the bull, and I'll bump my gums.
True.
I think that was a great episode.